Hello, everybody. Today is Wednesday, May 23rd, and we are bringing you Block Digest number 100 at block height 524,007. Or, wait a minute, is it? Did we fuck up the math, guys? Oops.
100? Oh,
what?
no.
Off by one?
Did Garzik write this code? What's going on here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. he writes our show script. Everyone knows that.
Dun dun dun. Well, I guess we'll introduce everybody and try to figure out whether our math's off or not. Rick, what's your input? I'm mathematically retarded.
I think our math is dead on, man. The numbers add up right on with the memes. Like, I think it's dead on center somewhere. And yeah, I got a little bit of a different background. I just moved to a new location, so if y'all notice, like, oh, somewhere different location, the same town.
JW, what about you? I noticed there was 31 episodes in the season 1 playlist, so I feel pretty confident our math is right.
I've got this $1 million mechanical watch, and I'm doing the math on it, but it's not. I think it's wrong. I think it's off. I got to sell some more scam coins so that I can get like a $1.5 million watch, and then I bet it will tell me whether it's episode 100 or not.
How about you, Janine? What's your take on our math?
Well, I was just thinking E equals MC squared. That made me think of Einstein. And one of the ways that Einstein got inspired to study the philosophy and mathematics of time was because he was living in Switzerland and the trains were crashing into each other a lot. So he was like, oh, we should probably fix this.
Crashing. Yes.
Oh, train wreck reference. Is that like a foreshadowing of some of the stories coming up?
Acnix, what about you? Math check? Is our math check out?
What are you saying? Our math. Like we did. I didn't do any math. I did no math.
Why, yes, you did, sir. You were part of the team of expert crack mathematicians that collated the episode number.
It's actually binary anyway. It's episode 8.
What about trinary? I hear that's the new big thing.
Are you assuming someone's airnary? All right.
No, it's just, trinary is like the only way to build a good blockchain, or sorry, not blockchain, distributed ledger, somehow, not blockchain, something.
All right.
So I'm gonna cut in with the first story. You know what I'm gonna say? I'm gonna say I told you so. Yeah, after the last episode covering Bitbond, a small German bank that was using Bitcoin as a SWIFT alternative for international transfers. Guess what? Banco Mas Vantas in Argentina is now doing the same thing. I told you so. It's happening. But seriously though, this is pretty fucking cool. And they've partnered with a Latin American exchange, Bitex, that's been around for around 4 or 5 years now. And this is use cases. More demand for the coins on the open market. You need to actually buy the Bitcoin to send them. More transactional demand, which is yet another use case, adding miner revenue. I mean, like, come on. Is Bitcoin 2018 going to be the year of the bank? I think it might, and I think that might trigger a lot of people.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I was excited to see it, man. Like, we saw that news from Argentina. Remember, like, when 2x like first started picking up, is like the Argentinian and the Brazilian meetups got together, and it was just like a letter put out where it was like you could tell, like, they were using Bitcoin and they knew what Bitcoin was all about, and how this whole 2x argument was just sort of like a big cloud. And so yeah, it's good to see some more good news coming out of Argentina. I'm sure that the Bitcoin community over there is real excited about it, and like to get some more takes from those guys for sure.
I mean, just beyond like the Bitcoin community, I mean, this is like this is fucking awesome. Like, this is taking that censorship resistant quality that we're all here for and extending it to, frankly, the plebs who can't figure out how to use anything but a bank account, who could not wrap their head around any of this. Now, when it comes to international transfers, like, they don't even have to be aware of it. They just go, they send their payment, and the bank wires it off using Bitcoin. Cheaper, confirmed with finality faster, like unable to be censored. Like, I mean, it might not seem like a huge thing because it's like, whoa, nobody's using their own private keys here. But like, this is bringing an element of that censorship resistance to your average consumers of this bank.
Yeah, I think it's just another, like, I mean, it's crazy. Like, banks starting to use this stuff, any bank starting to use Bitcoin is a pretty big milestone. And I'm sure that it's abstracted away from them, right? Like, they're not really directly using Bitcoin, but these stories coming out do have an impact. And the fact that it is solving a really real problem, and that there's a bank that's benefiting, like, that stuff is going to continue to pick up steam, I think. I mean, it's just, again, one of those things that I wouldn't have expected necessarily to happen this quickly. So the price doesn't seem to reflect any of the technical progress or even like real adoption, because everybody that's in the market is just so stupid, but eventually they'll catch up, and this stuff is really, really good news.
Well, I mean, that's the beauty of it, JW, is that when it comes to things like this, price doesn't fucking matter. And I mean, one interesting thing I kind of want to fucking, get into, I'm probably going to be having a surprise phone call at some point, so I'm going to have to go dark for maybe 10 minutes, but is like the remittance businesses in this space. I mean, there is a decent number of businesses that are trying to carve out like chunks of the international remittance business using Bitcoin. And I got to ask the question, like, if more and more banks start hopping on board and using Bitcoin directly themselves for international payments, then doesn't that kind of cut out that niche of a specifically focused remittance business? Like, why would anybody need to go use like a specific business for that if their own bank like has direct access to wiring money using Bitcoin as the backend?
Yeah, and then it's not a big step from there to go, oh, wait a minute, I can do this, right? All I have to do is have some Bitcoin and hold some Bitcoin. And I know that it's going to be a while before we get to that point, but I think it's a slippery slope. Like, because this stuff is going to be adopted in sort of a viral exponential way. I think it's gonna get really weird at some point. I don't know when it's gonna be, right? Like, it might be 3 years or 5 years, but at some point it's gonna hit a pretty drastic tipping point, just like the internet did and Facebook did. And I think that this is a step in that direction. Yeah,
I mean, it's it really is just it's weird right now, JW. I think we are far past the weird point. Like, you have the head of the fucking CFTC hashtag crypto dad. Like, banks are starting to play with using crypto. Like, we are well past the point of weird.
I agree. Yeah, it is. And I mean, the price is interesting to me only because it's like such a like, it's so disconnected from what's actually happening, right? Like, there has been like no price action upwards. It's all been down, and like all of the news has been positive, right? Like, Lightning being functional and being out there is that should have been enough for everybody to go, oh my God, it works, right? Like, I can't believe it. Everything was FUD. And the fact that also improves privacy should have had a huge impact. Like, the fact that if we wanted to, with bulletproofs now, we could enable confidential transactions if we thought it was a good idea. Like that there's all of these things are like major things of importance, and yet the price is totally flat. So it just, or like down. So it just shows that like maybe the market's not like completely stupid. It's just like 12 months behind reality, or 24 months behind reality, or 5 years behind reality. But it's interesting to me that even in like the short term, like there's no like there's no correlation there. So
well, I mean, like I hate talking markets, but I think there's like a few different factors, at least from where I'm standing and looking, is like there's really still a lot of last mile things to figure out, like especially in the case of Lightning. Like, I mean, the core protocol is rolled out and it's usable right now, but all of the like application layer features to actually make things usable for people, and a few like protocol level improvements that still haven't actually been like coded up and implemented yet, are lagging behind. So I mean, it's really just kind of not ready for that wide scale consumer use unless we want a repeat of like last holiday season. And then I mean, also, like, I have to imagine that there is both like large players attempting to suppress the price and kind of squeeze the OTC desks to accumulate as much as they can. And I also have to think that there's at least some players out there trying to accumulate on OTC specifically just to dump on the open market and then hedge with the futures. Because I mean, like that's always been like the one thing in the market dynamic that had all that upward pressure being generated, is like if you buy and you dump and you know you can't hedge that properly, you're screwed. And now big players can just hedge entirely in fiat and not have to worry about like, okay, I shorted, I got more Bitcoin to negate the losses, but now how do I dump that Bitcoin and realize those gains? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but in order for a big player to be able to do that, there has to be somebody else taking the other side of that bet. And the fact that like it's really obvious Lightning works now, right? Like I know it's not like we don't have an iPhone app, right? And maybe there's, you know, some bugs to be worked out, and I wouldn't recommend people do $10,000 in payments, but the fact that it's like painfully obvious, it's not just, you know, like it was painfully obvious to a lot of people when they just looked at the design, because it was like, holy crap, this is brilliant. This should work. You know, there's probably little issues here and there, but the fact that you could take something that was as secure as Bitcoin and do a second layer thing that's not even a side chain, it's not, you know, it actually has the same security, more or less, like very close to an on-chain transaction. That's incredible, right? And I really would expect that as people get that, as it clicks, like, oh, this actually could scale and still remain secure, that it would have a big impact. And I don't think market manipulation could totally cover that, right? Like if people understand that it works, they will want to buy it at ever increasing scale, and you won't be able to play games. Like ultimately the game that's being played is the altcoin, you know, and all the other FUD around cryptocurrency that's keeping people from investing more in it. So I'm sure it's just a matter of like, it just takes a long time for that information to go from people that are thinking about Bitcoin all day to, you know, to the, not just institutional investors, but like Main Street types. Right. So that's probably what it is, but it is shocking that there's not enough, you know, there's not enough people like, you know, major billionaire players that are going, oh no, I get it now, it's game over, and just jumping in hard. So I'm surprised, but that's all right. It's inevitable. So if it takes another 18 months for that to happen, or 10 years, right? That's either way is fine.
Just like listening to y'all talk about this, like, I mean, like this is these banks and everything, it's a pretty good sign of like that, you know, that these big players are coming in, but the price, you know, like, I don't know where we're supposed to be. Like, I never really look that much at the price. I mean, like I do look at it, but I never really assume like, okay, we should probably be here at this level of adoption or something. Like, I don't know where we should be, but there certainly is a lot of still just uncertainty as far as the, you know, like the person on the street wondering if like, is Lightning Network going to work over this? Our side chain's going to work over that? Like these things, like, yeah, if you're in the community and you've studied them well, then, you know, people would say like, yeah, like this looks like a pretty good way that Bitcoin's going to scale. It looks like this will work. Like all the technicals sound like they're going to work out, but it's you know, a lot of, like you're saying, there's misinformation out there, and there's not enough really like studies and like examples. And you know, we're trying to put up, like, you know, we're seeing more videos of people buying stuff with Lightning, and we're seeing more nodes getting spun up, more guides being put up. And these are the things where, like, after that happens, you know, we'll probably start to see a little bit more of that understanding in the general population, where maybe more of those people, like we're talking about, will start jumping in, and we'll see this wherever we're supposed to be.
Yep, totally.
And I mean, real quick tangent, things like this article here by Mr. Sam Eichen don't really help at all. And I mean, you know, to kind of preface, I don't really know who this guy is. I haven't really like seen him around the space or anything really he's written before this, but I mean, there's a few things in here that, like, it's just, you are spreading nonsense. Like, for instance, he has this section that users should run full nodes. Mobile full nodes will increase data and battery usage. And in kind of the way he plays with should, with like, and conflates that with have to, and then immediately extrapolates to a full node on a phone. Like, no, there's watchtowers. This has been addressed in the planned network architecture. Like, that's a completely nonsense point. He also goes into spending somewhere in here where he discusses atomic multipath routing, where like a payment can actually be broke up among like multiple individual paths to make a single payment. And the end of his section, he goes, but we don't know when this solution will be rolled. It's been out. Like, it's literally, to my understanding, it was out the minute that Lightning went to mainnet beta. My first Lightning Network payment used atomic multipath routing. So it's like you have people out there that are trying to go play Mr. Skeptic with Lightning Network who don't have a fucking clue how it works, aren't paying attention to what's deployed or not deployed. And they're just adding confusion to all of this because they want to run out there and be the guy who's being skeptical to the thing that everybody's fanboying. But they have no clue what the hell like, they don't know what they're talking about. And like, this kind of shit is what's really slowing down that propagation of information, because people have to sift through and be skeptical with the bullshit and assume anything, even what is good information, is bullshit first before they just go blindly believing everything.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like, it just doesn't exist. Most people can't read, right? Like, most people that have a lot of money can't read. So you're right. And that would be just if there was like good technical content out there in text form, it still wouldn't do it, right? It's got to be like put into like 30-second videos at best, and then really nobody's going to believe it because of the counter narratives. So you're right. It's probably smart for us to assume like it just doesn't exist until it's, you know, until a lot of people are using it for payments. And up until then, it's just it's not gonna be reflected in the market at all because it just doesn't exist to those people.
But you know, I don't know. We kind of wound from banks into Lightning and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, we're talking about adoption. It's a bank is adopting it, is adopting Bitcoin for cross-border payments. So it was a pretty crazy story to get us going.
I don't think the government would let me adopt.
Actually, if you're underqualified, that's the qualification in the United States.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's about right there.
But I don't know though, Janine. You want to take us through this this next story a little bit here, and I'll probably tag on and rage a little bit after you. Okay. We're getting a stall directive, guys. We got to stall. Shit. Why didn't I have my stalling means?
Let's jump into this discussion that I was going to cover. This Bitcoin, like, why is Bitcoin maximalism flawed? Like, it's a Medium post, and it's not like, you know, it's not something where, you know, I'm saying like, oh, this is. I just think this is an interesting topic to discuss. Like, you know, this guy's saying why it's deeply flawed. This guy Noah Rudderman, which you know, I don't really know the author or anything, but I do know that this is sort of an interesting topic of discussion between, you know, people in Bitcoin, where we were talking earlier about you know, just all the different ways that people are, you know, coming to understand the system, and whether how we're going to say like this works better than that. And you know, I know that JW really hates all these other altcoins and implementations, but he's got an argument here that I've heard, which like makes me think about that possibility of these things, you know, like there being a legitimate reason for this. And so like he basically goes into saying that, you know, most Bitcoin maximalists, we see that the scaling model is federated side chains with Lightning, and you know, we'll be able to do pegged side chains to Bitcoin. And you know, he's saying that there's you know, using altcoins with atomic swaps that aren't native to Bitcoin, then like that's a more trusted way to send a transaction. And he's like, you know, I'm not going to say like this guy's right on all this stuff in this article. I just like the gist of like the conversation. He's like saying that, you know, Bitcoin will likely not get the basket of features that altcoins provides, which like I'm not really sure what he's talking about there, because like you know, all these altcoins don't really bring any features to the system. Like really, they're kind of trying to, you know, not entirely duplicate Bitcoin, but trying to figure out something that Bitcoin's doing and make a niche out of it. But yeah, he's saying that you know, that altcoins with atomic swaps are more secure. And you know, his introduction into this whole thing, he talks about how he takes maximalism as a joke and like it shouldn't be taken seriously. But I don't know, I kind of get aggravated hearing that, because you know, I feel like we, you know, I don't know, I feel like he's thinking of maximalism as like this one mode of the way that Bitcoin's going to scale, and that's it. Like you know, just like a harsh stance, but not really thinking of like the nuance of like, you know, we're looking into these things and like we're testing these things out, and these things are all still being experimented with, where sort of comes to the perspective of like, this is the way we're going to move with it. And yeah, he talks about how like you know, he goes into this, how this Bitcoin has these two value propositions, security and decentralization, which it's aiming to be the most sound money. And like, I agree with that. But then he says like these priorities were the basis for the community schism that birthed Bitcoin Cash, which like, I don't really agree with that. Like, you know, feel like that was more just a covert ASIC boost and misguided incentives. And, you know, talks about how like things like ZK snarks and all this stuff is risky technology. It hasn't really been fully vetted out. And, you know, we don't really want to bloat the chain. And it's just, you know, it's an interesting discussion to talk about, really just side chains versus altcoins with atomic swaps, because I know that a lot of this, you know, this discussion about CT and how we're going to get that in Bitcoin, well, maybe it'll be in a side chain, and maybe you could do like go to the side chain and then come back, or there's tumblers and there's join markets and all these different things that we could do on Bitcoin. But, you know, it's just, sorry, I'm not really looking at the screen share, but yeah, it's like, you know, we don't really need the DAX or any of that stuff. I don't know. It's just something I wanted to bring up, because I know that, you know, the whole confidentiality, the anonymity of Bitcoin and stuff, that's really important. And I do start to see like the idea of atomic swaps with like, you know, coins that are, you know, not necessarily native with Bitcoin, but they, you know, you can swap in and out of that, and you could do your transaction that way. You know, like I'm saying, it's not really that well put together as far as like the experimentation on all that. This is all still pretty theoretical in my mind, but it is like something where I know JW, you know, you like you don't think there's any reason for these things, but I feel like this is something where there's a possibility that maybe this thing's more anonymous, but I'm not entirely sure. I just wanted to sort of bring this discussion up.
Real quick, I want to kind of point out a straw man that this guy is making, is that all features that are not compatible with Bitcoin right now are inherently valuable. And I think that assumption that all features are valuable is nonsense and a straw man.
Yeah, I mean, so I was on Tatiana Moreau's show yesterday. I don't know if you guys know who she is, but she's on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network, and those guys are pretty pro multi-coiners in general. So they had somebody from Zcash on, and the first half an hour was just this chick talking about how awesome Zcash is for privacy and all these wonderful things about it. And I was trying to figure out, like, how do I answer the question? Because I know they're going to ask. I was on there to talk about MathBot. And so I really didn't want to talk about, Zcash or slam them, too much and, mock another guest when they weren't expecting it. But I was like, I had plenty of time to sit there and think about how I was going to try to be nice and still answer the question as to why MathBot is not going to enable Zcash. And sure enough, she asked. So what I came up with was, look, open source software, everybody's allowed to steal everybody else's ideas. It's just how it works. So if anybody comes up with anything good, it'll be copied. And Bitcoin has a lot of really competent developers that are working really hard in the space, like arguably probably 100 or 10 for every competent developer on any other open source altcoin. So it doesn't make sense to me. And just with that, that's all you need to know. You don't need to know any of the details of the designs. You don't need to know whether Monero is good for privacy or Zcash is good for privacy or Litecoin is good for scaling. All you have to do is kind of have a vague understanding of how open source software works, and none of this shit makes sense anymore. So that's my response to. I think I'm gonna lead with that from now on, because I think the fundamental problem is people just don't understand open source software.
Sorry, go ahead, Rick.
I was just thinking, like, you're saying that as long as it's an open source project, wait a minute.
So let's say that something worked. Like, okay, we've got 100 good developers working on. Let's take like altcoins and all the cryptocurrencies out of it. Let's say that there's teams that are working on open source databases, right? And these open source databases, they're let's just say that they all have the same application. They all have the same mission, right? They're all trying to build a SQL sort of database, right? And if they're all trying to do that, and you have 100 good developers on MySQL for every good developer that you have on every other open source project, and they all have the same mission, right? They all have the same goal. If, Fred SQL ends up doing something that's brilliant, why wouldn't the MySQL developers copy that? They would. That's how open source software works. So if they don't, there's two possibilities. One is that they're not competent, that Fred SQL did something good and the MySQL devs weren't smart enough to copy it. Or that the Fred SQL stuff is not good. They made a bad design decision. They did something that looks good, but maybe it's going to have terrible performance issues, or maybe it's not going to work from a security standpoint, or maybe it's just like super unuser friendly, and in the long run it's not going to work out, right? Whatever. But if you assume that everybody can copy everybody else's work, and there's 100 good people on project A for every good person on project B, it's really hard to imagine a circumstance. I think it's a logical impossibility. And it doesn't, I can also look historically, right? Like I can look at software projects and say, yeah, that's how that shit works out. And I can also look at Bitcoin specifically and go, every time I thought there was something interesting going on Fred SQL and wondered why it wasn't being copied by the MySQL guys, there was a really good answer. And the most recent example of that is confidential transactions. I was like starting to wonder, like, we got bulletproofs, we got some of the stuff going, why aren't we doing it? And I asked one of the developers, and he was like, well, there's, the huge downside of that, because we could potentially have attacks, not that are in the wild right now, but there are attacks that we expose ourselves to that we wouldn't notice, where we could inflate coins, right? And that is a major risk for the sound money proposition. And I was like, shit, you're right. So every time I question the group of competent guys, surprise, surprise, they're competent, right?
Okay, man. Like, I'm just thinking, like, if it's CT we're talking about, like, that's where, because, like, this is really where I've just went the discussion to talk about, like, yeah, because CT and anonymity and all that, you know, I know that Bitcoin can be anonymous if you're smart enough with it and everything, but how are we going to get that to where it's easier for the everyday user? And that's where I'm thinking like the federated sidechain thing, like that is, you know, that's a good idea in the way that I could see that thing definitely scaling. It's just I'm curious about, you know, these atomic swap. Like I understand you're like you don't like the projects, but I'm thinking like these things are different than regular projects. I mean, these things have different, like Bitcoin's trying to do several goals, right? Like, I mean, it's creating sound money, but it's also like giving us like a new way of, you know, validating data and kind of a method of ensuring there's consensus between a given point, or you know, it's also, you know, giving us a unit of measure. It's doing these multiple things where it's hard to like say like, okay, so are we going to be able to get anonymity? Like, how are you going to get that?
No, that's a really good, that's a good point, man. That's a good question. So in that scenario I described, I assume that all these open source projects are trying to build the same thing, right? And what you're saying is, well, maybe that's not what's happening. Maybe Bitcoin is trying to be more of like a pickup truck that can do all kinds of things, and maybe Zcash is trying to just be really good at privacy, right?
Well, see, can I jump in real quick with this?
Yeah, I was just saying that that's a good question, and I mean, I have an answer for it, but it's something that I hadn't addressed, and it is a good question. So go ahead.
See, like the ZK snacks thing, or ZK snarks thing. Wow, that's okay. Is like the whole issue with that was, one, it was very computationally heavy. Like, I know they brought it down a lot in the most current release from what I've been following, but it took something like 8 gigabytes of RAM to actually create a shielded like private transaction with that at first. So that was completely unfeasible on the normal user end side to get a decent anonymity set. And 2 is the ZK snarks, unlike the Starks, which I am not going to be able to break down the differences between except this one, is that the ZK snarks required the trusted setup, which left open the potential of secret inflation if the setup was compromised. And so that also was completely unacceptable. But as far as ZK Starks, which would give you the same kind of privacy and provability without that trusted setup, that is something that a lot of Bitcoiners are very interested in. And that is something that if solid, will probably make it into Bitcoin in the long term. I mean, I still have to go through it because like the math and the crypto is way over my head. But there was recently a proposal, I think Corda, that was actually, it was literally taking an entire chain and condensing it into a series of ZK Starks that would like prove the validity of everything. So like you could literally boil the entire chain down to, here is this small amount of bytes that can prove the entire integrity of the chain, the UTXO set, selective proofs for parts of it. And so like as designs like that are more fleshed out and like really investigated more, I very much expect those kinds of proposals to be made for Bitcoin. But what Zcash went off and did was just, it was flawed with the setup. It was heavy in resource uses. And it's like, no, we're not just going to shoehorn the earliest version of something into Bitcoin and hope it doesn't break. Like, this is too important for that.
I agree with pretty much everything you said there, but I think that what Rick was saying wasn't like technology specific, right? Like the interesting thing that I think he brought up is I imagine it's a question that other people have, because it is kind of fun. It's an assumption that I'm making. And that is that all of these things are trying to do the same thing. So maybe, you know, obviously Zcash sucks and obviously Monero sucks and all this other stuff. But in theory, maybe one of these things could be developed that's better at one thing than Bitcoin is better at. And I think that's worth addressing for sure. Because it probably isn't it is the narrative, right? It is the narrative that these guys have been selling. It's the same narrative that the scaling guys were selling. Like, it's the same narrative that that Litecoin had to be based on, right? Way back, like, oh, we're going to be good at something. I don't know. Like, we're going to be silver, right? Bitcoin's gold. We're going to be different, right?
Let's keep it specifically about CT too, because like that's something where it's like, you know, yeah, you could claim all these sort of things, but there is this issue with like, you know, people being bound,
Yeah,
you know.
right. So broadly speaking, I think that your question about are they trying to do different things, the answer is no. All of these things, even though all the altcoins will tell you they're trying to do different things, they're all trying to create a money. They're all trying to create a digital money. Money is a zero sum game, right? If Bitcoin's money, then everything else isn't money. And so whether they know it or not, whether they understand the economics at play, everybody is trying to create a really good money. And part of a really good money is fungibility, which is just a money speak for privacy, right? So there's no question that it's important. There's no question that all the Bitcoin, devs and everybody in the Bitcoin space cares about it. So it's not like it's been set aside. The only reason we don't have it right now is that it just hasn't been, we haven't figured out how to do it in a way that doesn't compromise other things, right? Like we have an airplane that's working really, really well, and maybe we would like to change part of it, but if we do that, then it doesn't fly for some other reason. So if you're an altcoin, you just make this piece of shit that doesn't fly, and then you tell everybody it flies, and they buy it. If it's Bitcoin, you don't. You go, okay, well, we would really like to put a jet engine on the back of this thing, but it's going to blow the wings off. So we need some time to think about it. And eventually we'll figure out how to make the wings a little sleeker or a little stronger. I don't know if we'll get confidential transactions on the chain or if it'll be a side chain. I mean, I was definitely expecting that we would get it on chain. But now I'm not even sure that we want to get it on chain. It might just be better from a security standpoint to have it in a side chain. And we do actually, like Liquid already has it, right? It's live. And it does support confidential transactions. Unfortunately we'll probably have RSK. I think they're going to do something evil at some point, but they're a side chain, and they have the ability to do some interesting stuff from a privacy standpoint if they want. So it's not like there isn't like a ton of progress being made. And the other thing I would say is, like, in theory, right? Like I'm talking in theory. In theory, it's open source software all trying to do the same thing. So in theory, the most competent group of devs should win, right? But then just look at the history and just validate whether that theory seems to be playing out. How many useful things have made their way from the altcoin space into Bitcoin? The answer is zero. Goose egg. That's really extremely weird.
Just said, there is like that CODA protocol. There's like interesting things being developed. I mean, there's other things out there like that.
But look, man, even in my example of like SQL versus Fred SQL, at some point in open source software, projects do suck in ideas from other things, right? Like MySQL certainly pulled in ideas from other databases that were being worked on at the time. And little projects did pop up to do like a NoSQL or a non-relational database or something. And if it was kind of in the same mission, it would get sucked in and become part of MySQL. We don't even have that in this space. Like, it's such bullshit. These projects are such nothing that they haven't ever contributed one single thing to the project that has the really competent devs on it. So it's like it's even worse than that baseline sort of how things normally work in open source software. It is like as stark a contrast as you could ever get.
I think this is like where just the whole reason I brought this up and wanted to discuss it is because I know that you kind of take this position that like the author was kind of standing up against, and it's like I kind of have this position where it is like I'm sort of in between. I don't know, is it the atomic swaps? Is it, I know that Lightning and SegWit and side chains, that model looks like that would work, but I'm like, in comparison, as far as the security, it's like almost like, well, after they've been used and then tested against a real harsh government, then can you say for sure, like, because maybe this atomic swaps with like a coin like CODA, like if CODA protocol, like where it's a ZK snarks that's all tied into something, or a Mimblewimble or something like that. They're like, there's these other technologies that might be a little bit more secure if the local governments are just so headstrong on making sure that they can unwrap who owns this what. It's
Yeah, but I mean, the way that in theory, I think that's totally possible. I don't think it's likely though, because in order for an altcoin, let's say a privacy altcoin, to be usable and useful to provide privacy to Bitcoin, and do the atomic swap thing, it has to support a lot of scale, right? Like, it can't be this goofy stuff that's out there now. And it can't be something that has like a trusted setup or any of that nonsense. It can't be opt-in, because if it was on by default, the whole blockchain would blow up like Zcash, right? It's got to be like a legitimately functional privacy coin. And the reason that we haven't seen a legitimately functional privacy coin is that they are not doing anything that Bitcoin wouldn't do if it worked. So I think if they ever did, right, this would be the exact sort of assumption that I went in with. If they ever did come up with something useful and start doing it so that you would want to atomic swap between Bitcoin and that thing, that's the point where that thing would be useful and it would get incorporated into Bitcoin. So I don't think it's likely. I think in theory, you know, maybe, but it's not. I really don't see a circumstance where that makes sense.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, I mean, like, I really, after looking into it for a long time, it's just like, yeah, this looks like this would work. I mean, fine, as far as like side chains with CT and like able to, you know, just be able to move liquidity around that way, or like just the fungibility that Lightning gives us as well. And like, you know, it's just like, it seems like there's lots of answers there that solves a lot of these problems. It's just like, you know, we have seen like this increase in like government crackdowns in this place, or like, you know, kidnappings in that place. It's just like one of those things where it does make you think about like, are there other possibilities that could be more secure? And like, there are interesting things like Mimblewimble and the Coda protocol that Shinobi brought up, where, yeah, like maybe these things that we're seeing right now with the trusted setup and, you know, Ring CT and all this sort of stuff, like maybe that's sort of going to be looked back as like, okay, that was a bad idea. But I mean, like, it definitely, I don't know. I feel like there's like varying grades of security. But I mean, like, yeah, I feel like, I don't know, the sidechain CT Lightning, that could work fine, but it's like, we not to, you know, got to have it really built up and used and being tested against people that want to crack these people down. And that's where it's like, I don't know. That's where it's like, I think we need more in the wild testing before we'll actually be able to say like with certainty that this definitely is going to be the best way to, you know, move transactions, have the fungibility and the privacy we want and everything going forward. So, you know, I think that, you know, you're right in your arguments. It's just, you're going to be making your argument for a while, I think, probably for the next couple of years or so.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably true. It'll take a while for it to be obvious to everybody else that hasn't, you know, done much in open source software or doesn't really get how security, you know, problems tend to get solved, or protocols get developed, right? Because like, we didn't even go into the whole like protocol argument, but we don't have multiple TCP IPs, right? There's a good reason for that. It's not how open source software works, and it's not as useful to have multiple TCP IPs. So I think, I mean, there's a lot of different arguments. I think what's worth noting, I guess the last thing I'll say is that the way the opposition operates is always a really good indication of the strength of an argument, right? And if you look at what all of the crap coiners are doing, and even like this label of maximalist, it's designed to make people like me that are just technically competent individuals sound like religious nuts. And if that's their best argument, that's their best response, is like just this goofy sort of bad PR, then I don't know. I mean, I don't even think you have to be a technical genius to know that I'm not full of shit right now, and they are, right? Like, just you got like 5 brain cells to rub together, I think you could figure out what's happening here. Yeah,
that maximalist is a religion argument. That's a narrative that should be drowned out too, because I really think that, you know, like, there's, you know, there's like, come on, we live in a world of teams and stuff, but I think the maximalists are like very technically competent people that weigh and measure things all the time. So I think that more of us should be thinking like that. Good job. So yeah, I think Janine, were you going to take us into something, or Shinobi?
Janine's gonna take us into it, and I'm gonna try not to rant for a second, but I'll probably end up ranting after she's done.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so before I get into that, I just want to say that I think in terms of privacy, the privacy altcoins are the test bed. They have taught us things about why we shouldn't use certain algorithms or features. Like, we wouldn't have known how big ring signatures were and how much of a cost that would have on the network. And so I think that is altcoins are a test bed of what not to use, and I still think that's valuable. Even if you don't end up adopting it, I still think that's valuable information to have. But yeah, so this Bitfury thing. So Keone Rodriguez tweeted about some of the promotional slides from Bitfury's Crystal tool, which we talked about in episode 70, I think, and also in more detail in the first episode of ZK Snacks back in January called Bits of Fury Blockchain Surveillance. And so in short, Crystal is a blockchain surveillance software tool for law enforcement, basically. That's all you really need to know. And in the slide, Keone tweeted that they claim to provide risk scores for addresses, and they will give you a, quote, detailed list of blockchain addresses from which Bitcoins come and go, in addition to a risk score for each source, each source address and a receive address. So they do it both ways, which shows the likelihood that a certain address is associated with criminal behavior. Woo, 7 hops back, woo. And they achieve this through autonomous tracking, woo, robot surveillance, because that's so innovative, automating things. We haven't seen that before. And so this allowed them to help cooperating cryptocurrency companies like wallets and exchanges to reject transactions from unwanted sources. Notice how it changed from criminals to people who are simply unwanted. That should be a key use of vocabulary there. Now there's a long thread of tweets below this one from Alex that I recommend reading. Alex Petrov is the CEO of Bitfury, and I don't think English is his first language, so I'm going to spell check and edit some of his tweets slightly. After you hodl for a long time, you will try to cash out, and you will be asked for a proof of cleanliness of your funds. Crystal will be exactly the tool that will help you. If your coins are the result of theft or ransomware, it will help. Tools are neutral. They become bad or good only in human hands. Now, that's technically true. He is quoting the one of the 3 laws of tech. I think it was the 3 laws of technology, and one of them was that technology is neither good nor bad nor neutral. And actually, it gets misinterpreted a lot. But the meaning of that is that tools do not have agency; humans have agency, and so when humans are ultimately responsible, they have the moral responsibility, not the tools. But that still doesn't mean that when you build tools that have a very limited scope and they're built with a certain intention, that does not mean you can't criticize them. So there's a tweet longer down in the thread, something about third dimensional economies, whatever that means. But if that part about Alex saying that this surveillance software is somehow of help to you and not a huge threat to fungibility that we should all be avoiding, you should be aware that from the start they have argued that Crystal is a privacy tool. In their original announcement post, they actually said that they will be showing Bitcoin users how to protect their privacy, which is downright silly, because if your clients are law enforcement, something that increases financial privacy is literally the exact opposite of your goal. Like, I don't know why I have to explain that, but apparently I have to point that out. Apparently to Bitfury as well. So I say we should all join Keone in his mission to expose this Crystal tool as not only snake oil, but also a tool that is against the ethos of Bitcoin altogether.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, Alex has been consistently using the excuse, and a bunch of other people running to his defense, that somebody will build it. Why not us? Well, a whole shit ton of ethical reasons, in my opinion. I mean, this is the equivalent of giving law enforcement a tool to scan to see if there are trace amounts of cocaine on a bill somebody gave you, and trying to fucking seize your money, potentially lock you up, drag you into a fucking cell, and harass you because some fucking bill that you have has trace amounts of cocaine on it from fucking 10 owners previously, and using that as some basis for fucking legal enforcement, which is fucking ridiculous. Because unless you are literally surrounding whoever you're talking about as a subject of investigation with every conceivable metadata point possible, in addition to those coins and the chain analytics data, you're just guessing. Like, you're just fucking looking at a set of data, you are guessing, and then law enforcement are taking actions against actual individuals based on that guesswork. Like, this entire field is fucking It's ridiculous. And it depends entirely on tagging people coming in and out of on and off ramps, of turning the fucking gatekeepers in terms of the interface between Bitcoin and the fiat system into surveillance agents. And I mean, just the notion that this is, hey, like you're going to need to prove your coins are clean one day. Okay, here, I'll go point to the fucking exchange that I bought them on and go there. That's where I acquired them. Why the fuck does everything that I do on the chain need to be tagged and tracked and fucking filtered through their system to prove that my fucking coins are legitimate? There's the exchange I bought them on. There's the record of it. What the fuck else do you need? Like this entire nonsense is bullshit rationalization to try to not look like they're doing exactly what they're doing. Cucking to law enforcement with inferior, inaccurate tools that I guarantee you are going to start causing people more and more problems based on guesswork and half-ass information.
Yeah, and I also want to point out that this whole idea that we should be tracking the source of funds and that you, as someone who may or may not know where your funds ultimately came from, is responsible for the morality of people who used it before you is completely antithetical to how actual money works under actual law. Because like they have this law for a very long time that if you receive money that was the proceeds of crime, like a hop or two back, has no effect on you. The money is fine. So the idea that you, like, some of these companies are going like 7-8 hops back, and it's like, sorry, you're going that far back. Like, no one can control whether any portion of their money was somehow sent to an exchange. The exchange kind of recycled it and all that. Like, no one can control that. So the idea that you would do this for Bitcoin, but that's not an acceptable thing to do with regular money, is completely stupid.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and it's really the precedent it's trying to establish. It's like it's not just a fucking privacy tool that's going to help Bitcoin users. It's fundamentally undermining the qualities of Bitcoin that allow it to function as money. Like if you start tacking and tracking arbitrary histories of absolutely everything and then holding the current fucking possessor responsible for all of that, like you're destroying its utility as money. Like it cannot function as money. And that's exactly where that court precedent and that law Janine's referring to came from, is an instance of money being stolen, shuffling through the economy, and then being identified in somebody else's hand later who did absolutely nothing illegal to acquire it. And the decision was made because you cannot maintain the integrity of an economy when somebody can just run around and go, oh, that bill was stolen from me at some arbitrary point in the past. That's still my property. You have to give it to me, despite the fact that you've actually let go of goods and services and something of value to yourself to acquire it. Like you just can't have an economy functioning now. Surprised you're so quiet, JW.
No, I mean, you guys, I was thinking of what I had to add. I think you guys covered it pretty well. I think it sucks that they're doing it, and they should absolutely have their brand name liquidated over it. And we should absolutely track these guys so that when they go to a new company, that new company is less appealing to the community. Yeah, I mean, I think they're bad guys. So, yeah, this is not good. I mean, it's none of anybody's business where you spend your money until you commit a crime, and then that should be investigated with good old fashioned, investigative techniques. We don't have to turn the whole world into 1984 just to catch the very rare and occasional murderer. So yeah, completely agree with the sentiment.
It's also pretty hilarious that Alex is under the impression that someone who has hodled for several years doesn't know how to cash out, quote, their Bitcoin without going to a centralized exchange that uses surveillance software. Like, you really think these people don't know what they're doing by now?
Mm-hmm. The whole thing is just like, they're literally doing everything they can, it seems, to undermine the functionality and the value proposition of Bitcoin, yet still trying to spit double speak out of the corner of their mouth and try to maintain like some kind of positive image or perception in the community. And it's just like, no, it's not going to work like that.
Yeah, I think it's just I think all these miners, they get to a point where they just realize they have to find a way to create a profit. And I think that, you know, the system is pretty much designed for your profits to go to zero as a miner. Any, you know, I mean, that's how free markets are designed, actually. So Bitcoin is like a super, super efficient free market. And there's no barrier to entry other than getting your hands on hardware. And so I think these guys may have enjoyed a little bit of a period of profit, and they can tell if they still have it that it's going to go away as hardware gets commoditized, because that's their only barrier to entry, really, that and access to electricity. And that's pretty hard to try to you know, maintain a cheaper access to electricity than a new entrant. So I think that they're probably, like a lot of these miners are going to be, struggling to figure out how they create a profit margin for themselves that's going to last. And yeah, and then it's just layers of PR and bullshit on top of that. They're just glad that law enforcement's willing to throw them, you know, some money, and they think that'll save them. But it won't. They better get used to the fact they're not going to make any more than it costs to pay the ops engineers and pay for the electricity and pay for the hardware. And if they get to enjoy some profits in the near term for being a first mover, they should enjoy that and move on to another business that's actually a good business, but not, you know, not feel like it has to be tied to Bitcoin mining in any way, because then they're just they're limiting themselves to the fields of options that are actually out there for profitable businesses in a really stupid way. And they're gonna, you know, do stuff like this and liquidate whatever brand they had. So bad move, guys.
I mean, it's like, I don't think it's going to work out very profitably at all either. Like, if you just look at half of the things on the current roadmap, like, you know, this isn't going to work well. But
yeah, not when you fire up the whole community and there's a bunch of security researchers that are just going to show how useless your tool is. Like, think 3 steps ahead, or at least 2 steps ahead. This is not a good move in any way that I can think. Oh, who did we lose? Am I the only one that's still here? All right. It looks like it's Rick. Are you still there? I know we lost Shinobi.
Oh yeah, I'm still
okay,
here.
Good.
What's
I was like,
here?
I don't know how much time I can stall just solo. So it looks like it's just you and me, because Rick's not. Rick was having trouble with his connection earlier, and Shinobi just went down. So, but next story. Let's see. Who? What do you want to talk about while we're waiting on those guys? Should we talk about? Should we talk about Fluffy Pony and his $1 million watch?
Yeah, I mean, my only well, not the watch. I don't really care about a freaking watch. It's like because I'm one of those people that I don't use a smartphone, so I like having a watch, but I would never spend millions of dollars on a watch. But you know, everyone has their own personal tastes and fetishes, I guess. And for some people, that is watches. I would just like something functional. It's fine for me.
No, I mean, it's not interesting to me that like a rich guy has a watch or has an expensive watch. I don't care. You can spend whatever you want on it, whatever, you know, do whatever you want with your own money. But I think what's fun about that story and what has been like just tickling me all morning. What is the phrase? Tickling me pink or whatever. Sounds. It doesn't sound right when I say it out loud. But what has been very amusing to me about this is just that it's like the perfect thing for a scammer to do, right? Like Craig Wright, all these guys that are selling scams, they're constantly doing like the classic scammer thing, which is try to draw more people into them, draw in the dumb people to be interested in them by showing like huge displays of wealth. But that stuff totally backfires in the long run because you end up creating so much political like will to see you suffer that even if the justice system is completely jacked up, it becomes one of those things where a politician, you know, a prosecuting attorney can go, oh, this is great. We've got this, you know, evil guy running around with $1 million watches, and people lost a bunch of money on Monero when Bitcoin finally enabled, you know, better privacy, or people just realized Monero was stupid. The price crashed. There's little old ladies, you know, eating dog food that lost all their money in crypto. It's I mean, if you're a scammer, this is the exact opposite of what you want to do. You do not want to draw attention to the fact that you're just a big baller. So I think we have a new standard for like the most ostentatious thing you can do in crypto too. It's no longer the Lambo. It's a watch that costs like 2.5 Lambos. So I think that's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've always found it kind of hilarious how willing some very rich people are to just show off their wealth, because to me, like, just personally, if I ever had that amount of money, I would constantly want to, because there's kind of this cliche where rich people wear like torn clothes. I think that's something like David Beckham does that and thing. It's like his whole brand is like wearing poor people clothes. And it's a cliche, but in some ways that's actually smart, because if you're just walking down the street, you're less likely to take notice of a person who's wearing, you know, regular clothes and not really showing off their wealth. Whereas someone who shows off their wealth, it just seems like a huge like operational security thing that I would want to do that. It's just, first of all, I would think of better ways to use my money. And two, it's just like, even if that was a good way to use my money, somehow it's just too much of a personal risk. Like,
yeah, I mean, there is a good argument for somebody like Fluffy Pony doing it, because he really is trying to attract people to invest in Monero. And if he goes to a conference with a bunch of, you know, idiots running around saying one Lambo, there's probably no better marketing. That's what I always, you know, everybody's like, oh, he's not trying to sell Monero. This guy is freaking great. Like, not only is he entertaining, and I'm just loving the hell out of this whole operation, this whole drama playing out, but he is a really good marketer. Like, he understood his target audience. He got people to pay attention to the watch. It got a bunch of eyeballs on Twitter and elsewhere after the fact. And to the people that are most likely to invest in Monero, I think you do have a bunch of people that really appeals to. So he nailed his target market. I think he's, you know, I'm actually taking notes. I think I can learn a lot about marketing from that dude. But well, until he goes to jail anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess while we're still waiting for Shinobi to come back, I mean,
Nopara's here though.
Yeah. Hey, Nopara. Can you hear us?
That's all right. He's just here
still setting up. So I don't know. The thing that we were looking at just before the show came on was about how apparently he's now announced this ticket, like meetup ticket thing on the blockchain, and it was just so like it's not even something that makes me angry, like, oh my god, he's a scammer. It just kind of makes me laugh. Like, they took the idea from the crypto raves, because the crypto raves have been apparently using Monero for a while now to, I don't know how, I've never looked into the technical mechanics of how it works, but it sounds like they either use Monero in a very special way, or they create a meta coin on top of Monero that they use as like a temporary meta blockchain, and then they issue tickets, and then that way, like, you have to mine this meta coin, and then the coin goes away after the party, which, you know, that's an interesting way of doing that. It's just kind of weird. Like, it's not useful. It's just weird and geeky and stuff, and I thought that was cool. So yeah, Fluffy's kind of just taken that. Fluffy and his partner have taken this idea from the crypto raves and just made a more boring version of it that probably will not be temporary, which makes it not as interesting or useful. So
but still, I mean, it's got people talking about it, and it's, you know, it's creative. Like, I got to give those guys credit for the creativity. Like, the Bcash guys just gross me out, right? Like, I can learn nothing about marketing from watching I don't know, Craig Wright you know, grind on some hooker. Like, that's not going to work for me. That's not gonna be how I sell products. But man, the way Fluffy Pony does it is pretty good. So I got to give credit where credit is due on that one. Hey Nopar, are you on? Can we hear you now?
Hi, yes, can you hear me, guys?
Oh, perfect timing, man. We are trying to stall until Rick or Shinobi gets back so that we can keep running through the story. So ready, go.
Okay, I just woke up and actually I just arrived to Korea. I couldn't even figure out where to plug in my computer and things like that. Like where is the light? How can I turn on? I
Nice.
set the alarm. And I don't know why I didn't wake up for that. So yeah, sorry about that.
Hey, did you end up seeing that restaurant Blake told you about on Maidong Street there?
Oh yeah, that's Bow Wow restaurant, right?
Oh, all right. We should probably. It's going to only go downhill from here if we have to stall anymore. It's going to be worse jokes, I promise. So
Well,
I don't
Yes.
know.
Let's not continue.
For Janine to jump into the next story or not.
Well, actually, the next story in the lineup was No Paras about Purse.io, and apparently they've called their Bcash implementation Bcash. And for some reason, they're doing a Bcash implementation for some reason. So that's interesting. Do you have more info on that? Because I only saw a bunch of angry people saying they would not use Purse.io anymore, which I've never done, so I don't know what the fuss is.
So yeah, I have to give it to them. You know, they have balls to call it Bcash, because they wrote implementation, Bitcoin full node implementation, and they called it Bitcoin. So now they wrote Bitcoin Cash, BCH full node implementation, and called it Bcash. Well, that's a logical choice.
Are these the same idiots that were responsible for disclosing a bug that they claimed that they found? It was some kind of performance bug in Bitcoin. They claimed they found it. They announced it at like Consensus or something live on stage, and claimed that they were responsible for finding it, even though there was like already a bug opened. It just hadn't been fully deployed yet.
Yes, so it was already fixed, but it wasn't deployed because whatever gets merged into Bitcoin Core, that takes a while to release it. So and the release was a few days away. It was already fixed, and then on Breaking Bitcoin, I'm not sure what's his name, Jeffrey or something like that, announced and showed how to break Bitcoin, and yeah, Bitcoin Core had to release it right away. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
So these guys, I'm always surprised like how far back the history of like, I think the first time that I was really shocked by the history of all of these guys was when I found out Vitalik was trying to sell a quantum computer simulator, because that's easier than building an actual quantum computer, but you get all the same benefits. That blew my mind. I was like, oh man, these guys are he's got like a much richer history of being a scammer than I thought. And actually, somebody sent me a bunch of stuff on Fluffy Pony just off the top of my head. I won't try to go into it, but it's top of mind right now because he's got a history too. He was raising money and doing some pretty shady crowd sale type stuff before he did Monero that I didn't know about until this morning. But yeah, I mean, these guys are the bad guys are like, they just keep coming back. And I'm pretty sure there's only like 50 of them, like in the whole space. Like if we could get rid of these 50 guys, we wouldn't have anything to talk about except for good news, it feels like. So yeah,
more guys would show up and replace those 50.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure that's true. But it's kind of amazing how small a group of bad guys there are. Yeah, I mean this Bcash thing, I think it's pretty funny because so we're calling it Bcash, right? Like almost all the community refers to it as Bcash. And if I understand it right, if this is the play, they think by creating something called Bcash, which is Purse.io, that we're going to stop calling it Bcash, maybe.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know, man. I saw this interview where Roger Ver and what was that guy's name? The Ryan Charles guy. They like sat down together. They're like doing some series, and they were talking about it. And it's the first time I seen Roger smile when he said Bcash. He was like, "Oh yes, there's this thing called Bcash, and this is it." And it's like, like we're not Bcash, we're Bitcoin Cash. Like, so I think they're using it as like, this is Bcash, not us, man.
Yeah, but it's not going to work, right? Like all it does is make everybody in the community want to call it Bcash all the more, right? Like I forevermore, absolutely, more than ever, if I have to refer to Bitcoin Cash, I will refer to it as Bcash, knowing that if anybody's stupid enough to not believe me that they shouldn't buy it, that they'll end up trying to, use purse.io instead of going and buying Bcash. So it seems like a really bad move. There's kind of an interesting thing in play that hasn't been announced yet that is kind of the similar, where the good guys are going to be releasing a product to take away a stupid term that the bad guys are using. But it makes sense, because if you use this particular term, you're going to end up in a funnel that makes sense. What these guys are doing, it's almost like they got wind of it or something and came up with this idea. But like everything that these guys do, it's like 15 degrees off. So it really doesn't make sense. But I'm glad to see the trend continue. Even in marketing, they can't quite figure it out.
Let's not forget that I wrote the white paper of Bitcoin Cash. It's a second layer scaling solution on top of Bitcoin based on Xiaomi and eCash. So, they are stealing the name of my project.
See, and that works. That's brilliant, because if anybody hears about Bitcoin Cash, they may end up going to your project. So that's that's great.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, in case there's anyone who doesn't know what Perks.io is or the history, basically they used to be this, apparently it was popular, I don't know how much it is anymore, but they're basically an intermediary between you and Amazon that allows you to buy things that you want from Amazon with Bitcoin. I don't know if they had any other altcoins, but that was basically their business model. And I don't know how well it's going, but I don't think it's going to go very
much. Taking advantage of, right? It was like, it was giving people a premium too. It was like, you can, like, I think it was like you could set your discount and wait for somebody to buy it. It's pretty interesting thing.
Discounts. Yeah, I mean, it is pretty interesting, and like, it's from a customer perspective, it's good because it means you can use your Bitcoin to buy things, and you can also get them at a discount. But as a business model, being an intermediary in that kind of business, I don't think that that's a long-term thing that's going to be successful, because you're basically just an intermediary. You can't really charge people a lot, or they're just going to skip over that whole process and go to Amazon or just buy things in person or something.
Yeah, I would have guessed that it wouldn't be. I mean, it's easy to say that, like, entrepreneurship's hard, right? But I think any of us would have been like, I'm not sure we're at that stage where people really want to spend their Bitcoin yet. I think we're still in sort of the adoption, hold, let it go up, and people will start spending it when it levels out, which is, I don't know how many years, but global adoption, the price of Bitcoin is going to be pretty hefty. But that being said, maybe you can give them the benefit of the doubt. They tried something, it didn't work. It's not totally obvious that it won't work. But when I completely lose respect for guys like this is when, instead of going, all right, well, we tried something, 9 out of 10 startups fail, let's pivot and see if we can do something else useful. We'll keep our brand name intact. They had already half liquidated their brand name by going out and doing something really asinine. And they didn't just piss off like the Bitcoin community, right? Like, that is a dick move throughout all of the software industry, to release a bug that has already been fixed, pretend it's your own. Like, that is not a good way to have your brand name have cachet among early adopters, right? So that was super stupid. And I think now that they're pivoting to just use this goofy name. Like, oh my gosh, if I was an angel investor in that thing, I would be getting out no matter, I'd take 10 cents on the dollar for anything I invested in those jackholes right now.
Well, I guess, yeah, it's like, it's the growing pains of, scaling and everything, where it's like at first it's like people were just trying to find a way to spend their Bitcoin and where to spend it. And, Purse.io came up and said, like, we'll set up this escrow to where you could set your discounts. And I mean, it was like a thing that was working for a while, to where people were buying things off of it and using it. But it, like you're saying, as we're growing and things are like becoming more apparent as to the way things are going to go, like, it seems like instead of pivoting towards something that's going to go in that direction with the way that, Bitcoin's going to scale, I mean, it's kind of like they just sort of start picking up all these alts and sort of saying like, okay, well, we're going to do this and that. And it seems like there's really been like a coalescing of that side of like, not bad ideas, but sort of like ideas that have grown stale. And then like, getting people to sort of just work together on this whole other implementations. But I don't know, like, Bcash at Purse.io, I think that's like where we started on this. Like, I guess that's, I don't know, I guess that's sort of like the opus mirandi of all these things. Like we're saying, as it's like, where like Bitcoin's moving forward, if you didn't take the time to really figure out where we're going with it, then you're just going to start picking up altcoins and start saying that, I mean, it seems like a lot of people are doing the Bitcoin Cash stuff because, there's a lot of funding on that side. So it's a good way to keep your name afloat.
Speaking of evil, who wants to talk about what Coinbase is doing?
Oh, Lord. I mean, yeah, I guess we should get into that a little bit. They're going for a banking license. And, this is just heavy rumor, really. Like, I mean, it is from the Wall Street Journal, which, like, the Wall Street Journal was, we covered a story on that recently, where the Ethereum SEC meeting was for the Wall Street Journal. So I don't know how much I'm going to actually weigh into this, other than like, it's obvious that Coinbase is trying to be this real regulated entity and do everything in their steps to make sure that they're working hand in hand with the government. And, I mean, they followed that whole NYA, like not NYA, but the New York license. And, they work in trying to, get close to government and, get all these altcoins together. And I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they are applying for a banking license. But I mean, like, I just, wanted to preference that it's kind of rumor. But, there's not much valid data there as far as like they are 100% going for this. But it just seems like they're trying to talk to regulators about getting a banking license, which, yeah, I guess they're trying to do the Bitcoin bank model.
It is interesting because if you think about Coinbase, it's hard to say why they aren't a bank. Like you can give them your money, right? You can give them fiat, they'll hold fiat, and they'll just give it back to you when you want to withdraw it, right? So you can use them as a bank, and then they also have, basically a foreign currency that they deal with, which is Bitcoin. And so you can transfer your fiat in, and then you could transfer a foreign currency out, which is Bitcoin, and then all this other crap too. And now they've got like the index fund where you can, I think that's live. I don't know. I haven't kept up with them enough, but the index fund, which is sort of messing around with like being a hedge, not a hedge fund, but like a brokerage account sort of thing. Like, give us your money. We'll invest it into this, diversified portfolio for you. So there's like, I don't know how they have not been, or I don't know if you were actually rational about it, other than using the term bank and maybe doing loans, why they wouldn't have been, a bank all along. I don't if there was any sense to all this. So I think the thing that's interesting is that maybe the banks won't adopt Bitcoin. Maybe these shady Bitcoin businesses will just adopt banks, right? Chase will never end up supporting Bitcoin. Coinbase will just become Chase. So that's kind of a fun thought. And I hope they do, actually, because I think it would bring a lot of clarity to people that Coinbase is not Bitcoin. Coinbase is the old banking system You know, it's a bank that gives you an on ramp or an off ramp to get the hell out of banks, which is what it is.
Yeah.
Well, one of the most interesting things to me about the article was or at least the CCN article, which, oh my God, that threw me for a loop. The first time I saw it, I was like, whoa, CNN wrote an article about Coinbase, but no, CCN, that must be very tricky. So in the article, like Rick said, this is all according to an anonymous source, but according to the anonymous source, Coinbase met with regulators at the U.S. Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, or OCC. I have never heard of the word comptroller before. It sounded like such a strange word, but apparently I just looked up the Wikipedia article for it, and it says it's a management level
government position
for. Yeah, it says it's a management level position responsible for supervising the quality of accounting and financial reporting of an organization, which that's an interesting place to be registering as a bank, but okay. Comptroller is a very interesting word.
Yeah, it's like super accountant / auditor. But yeah.
Yeah, the comptroller thing, I don't know. Like there's definitely some like weird positions out there in the government that should probably just, you know, be a couple like some other position. But like Coinbase is definitely trying to do the whole, I don't know, like you were just saying, like JW, how it's like they're like kind of sucking up the banks and stuff. It's just like I'm thinking like they are the ones providing these fast and loose financial instruments, and they're also, like you were saying, they have this index, but they're also doing like this you know, like I think it's like a premium trade desk where it's like you have to have over 10 million and you know, get invested in it. Like I don't think that's part of the index. I think the index was providing data for futures, and then they have this other premium desk, and they've got, it seems like they're putting together this whole thing where, like, yeah, if they get their banking license, I wouldn't be surprised if the next thing is they're going to talk about lending or something like that. It seems like they are trying to gather up everything they can do as far as current chaos of the financial markets without any sort of like, okay, this is the roadmap we're. Man, did I cut out right there? Yeah.
Whoa.
They're just running fast and loose. That's all I was going to finish off with.
All right. Well, sorry I kind of went AWOL, guys. I had that phone call to deal with. But is there any more on Coinbase before we slide along?
Nope. I think we keep rolling.
All right. Well, back to screen share land, which might not be here after this. This kind of really, like, this is poopy. So the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe has completely banned Bitcoin. They've banned the possession of it. They've banned the trading of it. They've banned the transfer of it. And this is just really shitty. I mean, it's like this is like the example country, as you can see here, of just horrible mismanagement of their currency with the $100 trillion Zimbabwe banknote here.
That was a sound financial system.
Well, they're claiming it is. Here's the chief registrar's quote: as monetary authorities, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe is the custodian of public trust and has an obligation to safeguard the integrity of payment systems. And so they lock out their entire populace from something that would actually allow them to hedge against devaluation loss through their own currency. And yeah, I mean, like this is just horrible.
Yeah, breaking news: country with terrible money bans good money.
Yeah, it definitely got me thinking about like the China ban, and just like, okay, so this is like another country that's taken a position of like, I think they're giving everybody 60 days to shut down any sort of operations that they're doing with Bitcoin. And like in that process, like, you know, they're saying they're doing it all in public interest. And like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous saying that they're doing that whenever it's obvious that there's an issue whenever you're spending $1 trillion Zimbabwe bucks for you know, it's pretty bad. I don't know what exactly it's called. Sorry about that. But yeah, like it's bad news. It's bad inflation over there, hyperinflation. Like this is a spot where, you know, really Bitcoin's actually needed, a place like this in Venezuela. And like you start to see you know, premiums in those areas. And like at least in Venezuela, it seems like the people still have access to that, where it's like the mining operations for Bitcoin, like you can't really do that anymore there because, you know, somebody's going to see that power, jump on top of you and take that. But, you know, it seems like there are some countries that are sort of content, like, are they're intent on like keeping their power. They really see this as something that Bitcoin is going to remove their power. And so, you know, they really go all out ham and say like everything's banned on it. And, you know, that's something where, I mean, like, I don't think they're actually going to be able to do it. Like, we know that Bitcoin's censorship resistant. We've got, you know, Gotenna with Samurai. We've got Blockstream satellites. There's ways to move transactions through the country without, you know, I mean, like, I just don't think that the actual, you know, it's going to be like just social pressure not to get on Bitcoin. Like, you know, like the way it's like in Venezuela, there's a pressure not to mine Bitcoin. And there it's like you just can't deal with it at all, which really sucks because like you're showing the $1 trillion note or whatever. It's absurd at this point. So it sucks to see a government take this harshest stance on it, something that could help its people.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, they don't enforce laws the way that we're probably thinking that they do. If, you know, if you're in the United States, if this happened in the US, it would be really, really, like, really hard to run a business. But my guess is that they're going to have a really hard time enforcing any of this. They don't really have the infrastructure for it. And if you are running a Bitcoin business, my guess is that you could just grease the right palms when they show up. And it's just going to be, you know, it probably looks a little bit more like a tax than a ban in a lot of ways. I don't know if there's even any big centralized exchanges there that are going to be affected by this. I guess that would really suck. But I'm imagining that there's going to be a lot of just sort of, you know, money changer type guys that are around if Bitcoin is happening much. Like local Bitcoins, I think picked up quite a bit of steam there for a while. And I'd be surprised if this ban actually dropped the volume much. It might even attract more attention to it and people will adopt it more. They certainly don't trust government in those countries. So, but the only other thing I was going to say is I think the way you pronounce their dollar is the bonk. So,
oh my God.
There you go for future reference there, Rick.
Oh my Lord. I thought I was bad throwing the Zimbabwe bucks. Come on, man. That's bad. But no.
I might be wrong. I think that's how you pronounce it. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. But
yeah, we're gonna have a hard time finding that body. But like, yeah, like I don't know what you're saying about just the premium and the volume and the exchanges and all that sort of stuff. Like, yeah, I'm sure that there's probably a way around it where they could grease the right hands like a tax. Because the China bans, like, you know, we heard about China ban like 10 times before there was an actual effort to try and ban. So, I mean, like, and all those bans were successful and sort of like you know, not really an advertising, but just sort of putting out a note saying like, hey, you know, there's this thing and people don't know about it. They look into it and then, you know, it does sort of get some more adoption. So it could be that case too. That would, you know, I don't know. We're going to have to, I guess, wait to see like how serious they take it this 60 days, you know. So I'm sure in the next couple of months, we'll start to see whether or not there's some real like infrastructure backing up these claims that they're going to, you know, halt this stuff.
Yeah, totally. I just want to note that I accomplished my goal today of insulting 2/3 of the globe between the My Dong Street and so.
Okay, JW.
Accomplished.
That's the good thing about being anonymous. You can do that sort of stuff.
I'm cool. All right, so I think I'm now done dealing with surprise phone calls. Status update, because I heard nothing that just happened since I stopped talking.
As long as you had heard that last sentence, you're good. You're caught up on all the insults that have been thrown around.
All right. Well, I guess are we done moping about how the Central Bank of Zimbabwe is screwing their own populace?
Yes, we're done moping about that for sure.
All right, well, I guess ready to slide along and have me actually present.
Yeah, let's mope about Bryan Kelly.
Woo! So a little birdie told Samson something that happened a long time ago that I think it's time everybody remembers. So Mr. Bryan Kelly, Mr. I'm going to teach you how to buy the top of Ripple. Mr. I'm constantly dumping all of my bags on the horribly naive viewers who look to me to see what to buy in the crypto space. Oh, what? He made a shitcoin back in 2015. What? Wait, he printed a coin out of thin air with coingen.io, a website I believe Blue Matt made that literally just spat out like altcoins based on, a few parameters you gave it.
Oh
and started running around talking about how his coin, Nautilus coin, was going to fix the flaws of Bitcoin.
That was Bryan Kelly.
Yep.
I think I even remember hearing about Nautilus coin, and that was way back before I was paying attention. So
some island using it. JW, you get it. A Greek island is actually using it. That means it's not a scam he printed out of thin air and sold on a bunch of people. I mean, who, like, seriously, do we really think that this guy who sits there with millions of people watching him every day would really just, dump his bags on people to make a shit ton of profit? I mean, really?
I am just loving the fact that, CNBC, because it's a mainstream news source, supposed to be trusted, and they have this guy as a host on their channel. Like, it's just hilarious.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, and it goes to show, like, even the mainstream figures in the space, hey, guess what? They'll pull scammy shit. They'll pull the wool over your eyes. They'll try to fleece you. And, like, yeah, I mean, just because somebody has X number of followers under them or X number of viewers on TV, it doesn't speak anything to their competence or their credibility.
I mean, come on, everyone who is not a developer and got involved in Bitcoin before 2014 was a seller on the Silk Road or something like that. Seriously.
That's different than scamming people with shit coins, though. No, that's ethical.
That was good stuff, but it probably didn't attract the right kind of entrepreneurs to start running big businesses in the space.
So, yeah, I have a proposal because, CoinGen has generated so many scam coins, including this one. I think we should rename it to Ethereum. I think CoinGen.io is the true ether.
So does that make Blue Matt a scammer?
It just makes him a more humble Vitalik.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Wow.
But look, it's not even developers are early developers.
So I couldn't find the article on this. I was just looking earlier, but somebody DM'd me and said that CNBC put out a statement after the series of tweets that Samson started around Bryan Kelly being a scammer, just reiterating that they have certain policies. And I thought, that's good news. I mean, the fact that his boss or his boss's boss had to actually put out a statement means that at least it was noted. So that's kind of fun.
Have policies. Very interesting. Policies. I wonder what they are.
It doesn't matter. They're not going to be enforced because their whole business model is doing scammy crap like this. But if he wasn't handing out the right cuts, maybe he'll get in trouble.
How can you even catch him to enforce anything? I Shinobi Monkey created this shitcoin. Now prove that I'm not using a voice modulator right now and constantly on TV selling random shitcoins I'm making under a random name on the internet. Like, good luck. You're never gonna do it.
Well, I mean, look, he is obvious, right? Like, he's coming at he did a live demo of how to buy Ripple. If he was not paid to do that, then he's not very good at his job.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, man. Like to think that that's like the level of like scamming that's going on. It is like just straight up all the way to the mainstream. I guess it is a good thing that they have to at least like, yeah, put out a statement to be like, yeah, this is part of the policies.
I can just imagine when they were hiring him and like the management is like standing in office and they're like, where could we hire a bunch of people to do some research on his background to make sure that he hasn't done anything shady and he would make a good host? Where could we get those researchers and journalists? CNBC? No. Like, I'm sorry, but if you work for a media organization, like you should have, especially, you know, a prominent one like CNBC, you like there's really no excuse for you not to hire a good researcher to like just do some basic internet searches to find out the history of people before you hire them. Like this is a no-brainer.
I don't know. I think that whole MSM stuff is turning into a freaking like entertainment industry, and they're just like perfectly content in misguiding everyone into a gutter until they, you know, get whatever levels they want as far as viewership and stuff. It's I don't know. It's an awful thing that they could just, yeah. I mean, like, you know, that selling like getting people to buy Ripple at the top the way he did. That like that's something. I mean, like, I don't know what that's going to be something that's going to be following him around. I mean, thought he could escape this Nautilus coin thing. Like, I don't know if he created that anonymously or was that something that he actually put his name under to try and pitch. But I mean, it's pretty awful, the level of scamminess on the mainstream media. I mean, like, not just in this field, you know, all the way up and down throughout news about every which subject is always sort of misguided.
Yeah, I am pretty encouraged by how many people are like, you know, the BTC threats. No, I'm sorry. Darksidebtc.com really hasn't gotten any traction as far as updating the wiki of all the, you know, the scammers in the space. But I am encouraged how many people are like creating little archives here and there. Right. So when it does get to the point, you know, like if you start engaging with these guys, you know, somebody will DM you like, you know, I was making fun of Fluffy Pony today, and somebody DM'd me his little archive of like all these photos that he's grabbed of Fluffy Pony wearing all this like ostentatious stuff.
Fluffy alone.
But I just love that there's other people that are like, yeah, you know, we're gonna watch this scam right out, but I'm gonna grab that. I'm gonna throw that off to the side, right? Like the internet doesn't forget. The amount of data on all these guys is going to be more than sufficient once we get to the point of entering that stage.
Yeah.
Leave Fluffy alone.
I don't think that's going to happen at this point. He likes this. He likes the spotlight. That's all right.
Yeah, no, he's good, man. I can't leave him alone. He does his job too good. He does a good job staying in the spotlight and being entertaining. So, you know, I appreciate him.
Speaking of accusing people of weird things, I want to mention in an interim before we go to the next story that I saw this weird tweet directed at the Block Digest account yesterday that was saying that they don't like watching. By the way, the glorious name of this person was Nutbag, so that's an indication of anything. He said,
trust a guy named Nutbag.
He made an interesting accusation that that he doesn't watch Block Digest because I, being the woman on the show, am constantly proclaiming it to be Women in Crypto Month. So I would like to ask right now, have I ever done that?
That's
no.
What?
Oh, that's really great. He sent that like that was like a direct message to the Block Digest account.
No, he mentioned it in another thread, and he was commenting below an article by Forbes. Apparently, there's this whole campaign of women who wear Satoshi as female shirts, and he was ticked off by that. And I think it's just stupid. But for him to like purposely like tagged Block Digest in the tweet. And he's like, that's why I don't watch Block Digest, because he called me Julene as well.
Watch
Interesting.
Block Digest because of this thing I saw on Block Digest, even though I don't watch Block Digest. That makes me like, what?
I guess that's what we get for putting out that list, an actual legit list. He probably just saw that and was like, well, they're a part of it. They lost it.
I don't watch Block Digest, but I know that this one lady is constantly talking about Women in Crypto Month.
In honor of that, I would like to be the first one to say it is Women in Crypto Month on Block Digest. In honor of that, we will do our best to have at least one intelligent woman that knows crypto on the show every single show this month.
Women in Crypto, always off by one.
Okay, so yeah, May's the.
Wanna invite
Women in
Bitcoin Mai from Japan?
Do it.
Oh, I was just talking about Janine. Like, we hit our quota every week with Janine, so we could say we have at least one woman on the show every episode. But yeah, I guess we could.
Yeah, but the thing is that this show is like severely underrepresented, like in terms of diversity. Apparently,
well, I mean, I would actually just like to hear the perspective of what's going on in Japan, because it's like I really only ever see that from like her and just kind of secondhand through like articles and random things on Twitter. Like I've never actually been able to sit down with somebody involved in Bitcoin from Japan and kind of pick their brain directly. You know what I mean? And given how important it's becoming.
So because Nicolas Dorier in Japan, I go to Japan once in a while, and I know what's going on there. It's blockchain.
No, what?
You just broke my heart. You just
Bitcoin.
So no, they are not very enthusiastic about freedom that Bitcoin can offer. Like, not at all. They don't care.
I think that might have something to do with just like misunderstanding.
But they are still in Bitcoin because that's where they can build business models. And I can actually get someone in the show that grabbed Craig Wright and Luke Jr. and made a photo with them together.
Wait. How did you even get Craig Wright and Luke Jr. in the same room?
Right.
How did that whoa. Wait, did someone else just pop up?
I think Cobra was there too.
No, Aknix came back.
I'm back. The trick is he's such a nice Japanese guy that he can pull this off, because you just cannot imagine that he has any kind of bad intentions ever. So he can pull this off. He talks to Jihan and he's listening to Jihan. He talks to Roger Ver, he's listening to Roger Ver, and he comes talking with us, one of my best friend Jimmy, and he just he's an amazing person. But yeah,
that'd be fun. We should totally have him on. It'd be great to get his perspective.
It would be great to get a show where we would have like somebody from Japan, somebody from Zimbabwe, somebody from like Venezuela, somebody from Russia, like really get like the whole.
Yeah, so I'm saying this because I'm going to Japan I'm going to organize Nicolas Dorier's bachelor party in Japan in 2 weeks. So
sounds like fun.
So yeah, for people who don't know who Nicolas is, he's the writer of NBitcoin, the .NET Bitcoin library. He's the creator, and yeah, so I can bring them on the show if you guys want.
Nicolas Dorier, your Windows only hope.
Yeah, you should tell your friend to rename his bachelor party to Bcashler party.
I'm like sitting here trying to think like, what is Bitcoin bachelor party? Like you could think of something like, yeah, there's definitely some room to go nuts there. Bachelor party. That sounds like
we wrote the C# Bitcoin book, and the first version was written by entirely by Nicolas, and he put a joke in there, which was probably not a joke, that Well, we wasn't hired by Microsoft, but it's not too late to change that. So we're still waiting for Microsoft offer, but we're not getting any.
They're fools then. That would be a hell of a hire.
There's a reason that Microsoft was incorporated the day after. What was like the day after? It was the day before, April 5th, 1965, was Satoshi's birthday. April 4th, 1965 was the Microsoft incorporation date.
All right, we got to put down the conspiracy board, or we're gonna go nuts. All right, so I guess two stories left. You guys want to dive into them?
Yeah, run through them real quick.
All right. Sure, JW's not going to be happy about this first one, but Kraken, over consensus, donated $1 million to Coin Center and are actually willing to match up until the end of the month any donations made to Coin Center up to $1 million. And honestly, despite the retarded logic they are using to try to argue that Ethereum is not a security, like this is really the only group I see out there that's actually doing the important regulatory lobbying, like not approaching things from the favor trading aspect, or I just want to allow my shit coin to get out there and be pumped. Like they're actually sitting through and thinking through like a lot of the long-term regulatory issues and gray areas. And I mean, you know, I'm sure all the ANCAPs out there is sitting there thinking, who gives a shit? We're going to do what we want anyway. And while that is true, I personally would like to live in a world where we get as little shit from regulators and government agencies as possible. So I do like to see like a group like this actually trying to, I don't know, beat the crazy out of regulation proposals as much as you could say that's being done or could be done.
I basically see Coin Center's job as to just keep the regulators busy and doing something other than looking at everyone else.
Yeah,
they're just their purpose of their organization is basically distract the regulators while the actual work gets done. Like the development work.
I'm happy to see this. I mean, we got to pay off the right people in order to keep things going until we don't anymore. So that's good. Throw $1 million to Coin Center. They throw 70% of that to the right regulators, and maybe they don't screw with you for a few more months. This is how business gets done in the United States. So I'm happy about it.
Yeah, you know, it really kind of falls right on the heels of like Kraken saying F you to the New York Attorney General whenever he was saying like, give us all this information. It's like, you know, like, look, there's a bunch of BS going on here in the US, and the way regulations all get shaken out and enforced is really all kind of nuanced social structures. So, I mean, like it probably is going to serve them really well, actually. And, I'm also in agreement in the spec that like Coin Center is like, they do a good job in doing what they do. And, I'm not really a good like idea of how exactly these ideas should be spread. And like, that's kind of like the business as usual is like, you lobby these guys in DC. I've never even been to DC, but I guess there's like regulators just walking around the streets there. And so you could talk to them. I really think that, that's efficient. I like it. I really do wish that there was some sort of like, push towards something a little bit non-traditional with the lobbying efforts as far as going towards strictly geographical areas of the country instead of like just staying in DC. But I don't know what I'm talking about. DC might be like, that is like the power broker of the country. So I guess you kind of have to have a strong force there.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of issues that I really think people don't consider. I mean, like, just the issue of what constitutes custody. Like, is a multi-sig address, is that considered a custodial arrangement? Like, where does cryptocurrency fit into things like, money transmission and the licensing regimes for that? Like, how is this going to interact with the insurance markets and things like that? And it's, a lot of really nuanced gray areas that there isn't any solid clarity on. And it's really important to have somebody like Coin Center or any advocacy group without their head up their ass kind of dealing with this. Because I mean, that really is a stupid thing when you sit and think about it. But like, what is custody in terms of cryptocurrency? That could throw up a whole lot of roadblocks and problems for all kinds of projects in the future if we don't actually arrive at like a clear definition of it.
Yeah, I don't want to talk trash about Coin Center specifically because I don't know too much of exactly what's going on. But I will say that in general,
what does even Coin Center do?
They're a lobbying. So in general, and this is like saying in general politicians steal, right? It's like, yeah, I'm saying in general, but you could just say politicians steal, all of them. So this lobbying group, I mean, their job
what is lobbying?
Oh, that's where you pay off politicians, but you do it in a creative way so that you don't go to jail for it.
It's legal. It's pretty much legally bribing to suggest certain policies or things.
It's supposed to be educating.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. This is just like a bullshit narrative, right? Like the idea that, I mean, if you guys buy into the idea that mostly what these guys are doing is meeting with regulators and politicians that really care about making the right decisions, and they're just learning about how Bitcoin works and learning what custody is and that sort of stuff, this would be a real big departure from how this business normally operates. And I think it's very unlikely. I think it's far more likely that that, you know, either Kraken pulled the Trump, right? Like, F you regulators, psh, here's some money, right? Which is kind of Trump's typical move, which is a good move, right? Like you say, I hate your guts, and then you pay them off in the alley around the corner, and then you get both sides on your side. So either that's what Kraken was doing on purpose, or maybe it became really clear that they were going to be kicked around because they had been so aggressive with regulators. You know, there was a meeting and it was made clear to them. But at the end of the day, look, they said some really harsh stuff about regulation and then put money in the hands of people whose primary job it is to put money in the hands of regulators. So you can interpret that how you want. I don't see it as a good thing, but you know, these centralized exchanges, they're going to have a hell of a time. So use BISC.
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying, yeah, the lobbying efforts are usually just to sort of grease all the right wheels to where you could get your outcome that you're looking for, and it's usually all based on the amount of money and not real information. However, you know, with these regulators in DC, I don't know, man. Like, you know, it seems like maybe the Silk Road and the Ross Ulbricht case might have like been like a government assumption of like, this is going to shut this Bitcoin thing up, and then it didn't, and now they're wondering like what the heck to do. But I mean, like, I don't know, I could be wrong. I'm just like speculating that maybe they are actually trying to learn what the hell this thing is and how they can't stop it, and you know, why they're going to have to look on trying to figure out a way to, you know, get the system in line with it to where it's not going to be some complete disaster whenever there is like a turnover from one system to another. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I've never been to DC. I've never actually met someone who said like I'm a regulator and like talked about all this stuff. It's just you know, judging from like the way that business works in DC, I don't know. It's I wouldn't surprise me if it's all just to sort of get favorable regulations or get some regulators off their back or something. But it also wouldn't be surprising to me if they legitimately don't know what's going on and they want to know and they need somebody to educate them about it. There's probably a little bit of this and that all over that place as far as DC and lobbying and all that.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's, you know, it's really just the easiest way, I think, to remove as much regulatory and legal friction as possible. I mean, yeah, it's nice in theory to say, fuck everybody, I'm going to do what I want. But in reality, that doesn't usually work so well in a world with other people who don't want you to do what you want.
Yeah. All right, man. So what's going on with Bitcoin Gold?
Well, this is the interesting thing. So around 5 days ago, on the Bitcoin Gold forum here, they're discussing a 51% attack going on to steal money from exchanges, and they didn't name any of the exchanges specifically, but they said in their communications one of the exchanges involved in this said that they strongly believe this is an attacker that attempted to double spend Bitcoin in the past with them. And like the pretty much in context though, like that I wanted to bring it up is we had the whole Monero incident, which I still have not found a clear explanation for. Vergecoin was also recently hit by reorg attacks and double spend theft attempts. Then Bitcoin Gold was hit with these attacks, and now all I've seen are unsubstantiated like comments on Twitter. But apparently Monacoin too, I believe is. And it really seems like a lot of the kind of lower value non-ASIC coins out there are all getting attacked. And I mean, like to me, like I'm not sure like how to look at this. Like is this some?
I'll tell you how to look at it.
Yeah, I will give you my possibilities, sir, and then you will tell me how to look. But like, you know, the two things that jump to my mind, like, and stand out are the potential of Bitmain running around trying to pretty much like destroy the credibility of the security of coins without ASICs. And I mean, like, if you think about it, if he's successful in creating that impression and demonstrating it, then that puts him on a lot more solid footing to just continue working on ASICs for all kinds of different coins out there. And that's obviously very good for his bottom end, you know, as far as revenue and profit margins. And then also, as far as like in just an outright attack for the purposes of attacking, when you really think about like how a reorg attack works, the real important part is the energy in proportion being put into the attack versus like the total energy that honest participants in the network are consuming. And I don't think it's too crazy to wonder if you might have some, you know, state agencies going around and attacking smaller coins simply to gather some real world data on like how effective is this actually in practice? Like what does this accomplish? Like what is the proportional cost in terms of energy to attack a smaller network, because it's just cheaper to do as a smaller network, but then be able to kind of take those insights and extrapolate that data out to a bigger target like Bitcoin. Because again, it really just comes down to the proportional amount of energy. And if you can kind of test and demonstrate with a lot of smaller coins, like how much of the honest participants' energy is required for an attack and how much actual benefit you can gain from such an attack, then you can start looking at something like that in terms of Bitcoin with a lot more quantification and, you know, kind of a little more of a sound basis in attempting to kind of map out the costs and, you know, actual implementation details of something like that. And I'm not really sure like which one really seems like the most reasonable explanation to me, or like if there's some other explanation out there I'm not considering, or like this is just some idiot with a lot of money trying to steal stuff from exchanges. I mean, like, I don't really know what to make of it.
Definitely something where, you know, like if somebody was trying to attempt to, you know, 51% attack Bitcoin, like, I mean, I guess you could definitely sort of test out your ideas on one of these lower coin networks to sort of see like, okay, well, we can definitely get the hash rate of this. And maybe if we somehow knock power out to a certain percentage of the globe, then maybe we could do this same sort of thing to the network, a Bitcoin network. I don't know, like that seems a little out there, but I mean, I guess like if you wanted to do that sort of research, that's where you would do it. But I mean, like my first thought really was like, you know, Bitcoin mining is about taking off, where like, you know, these foundries are starting to develop mining chips, and like, you know, companies like ATI and NVIDIA are already starting to see a lot of income coming in from that direction. And, you know, it wouldn't surprise me to see them like sort of like seeing, you know, stepping into these areas where you know, it's like, well, it's like right now there's sort of like this question of like, can you even be ASIC resistant? Can you resist ASICs? Like, and you know, that's something where like maybe these foundries that aren't really yet, you know, well known as for developing Bitcoin software, like mining hardware, maybe they're actually working on some hardware on these other coins to try and basically you know, just earn income and sort of like do the research and development and also like kind of just make a name for themselves. I don't know. It's one of those where whenever I saw this, it got me thinking about the Monero thing too. And it got me thinking about ASIC resistance and just like a basic ASIC war. And like, you know, like, I don't know what like how we're going to do ASIC resistance, if that's the thing now. But it's definitely one of these stories where it just like, yeah, it gets me thinking about mining and all these sort of things. It's an interesting story.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate about who's doing it, right? Like I don't know whether it's Jihan, you know, that was interesting. I'm not really sure. But what I am sure about is that this is how software security works, right? Like I was arguing with Cobra and Luke Dash Jr. over the last 2 months until the Monero thing happened, saying, no, you cannot do this, right? It's a security design flaw if you try to avoid ASICs, because that's like saying we're not gonna use guns because we don't want the guns to be centralized. You know, maybe there's only gonna be one guy making guns, so we're just gonna make sure that we all fight with sticks. Like at a theoretical level, that does not work, because then somebody else, the bad guys, is free to create guns and then you're screwed, right? Because all you have is sticks. That's exactly how it is with ASICs. If you are trying to use a proof of work chain to secure your chain or to secure your coins, and you're going to choose to not use electricity as fast as possible or as efficient as possible, then the bad guys are going to do that, right? So you can either listen to the white hats and make smart decisions, or you can ignore them, and then the black hats will eventually show up, and you won't be able to ignore them. And that's just what we see playing out here. So I'm not sure exactly what the motivations are of the black hats, but I can tell you that everything that I have been saying is a flaw, and other smart people have been saying is a flaw, will be exploited at some point if it ever becomes worthwhile to pay attention to these stupid projects.
Yeah, man. It's I don't know. I was thinking of something right when you said that last part. I forgot it though. I guess shoot.
That's all right. No proof of work changes on Bitcoin,
said,
please.
Okay, you said it was like the sticks versus like guns. Like, you know, it's like developing a new weapon. You know, it's like you're coming up against a new level of technology, and you know, you're trying to stand up against it. It's going to look back, and you're gonna you know, I don't know. I guess eventually you're going to have to bow down to the fact that this thing is more powerful than what you've been using in the past. I mean, like, that's what's happened throughout history with weapons and stuff. So.
Yeah, these guys think that they can just set up like a gun-free zone, right? Like we're only going to use sticks because that's more democratic and nobody with guns show up. And then somebody creates guns, right? They create an ASIC and they hand you your ass. So
Yeah.
They don't just hand you their ass. They sneak up behind you while you're holding your stick and put the gun barrel to your back without anybody else noticing, and they just get you doing what they want.
They start robbing your pockets, and the next thing you know, you're on the ground. Yeah, it's a freaking war. It's just it's like, you know, I hate the term cyber warfare or whatever, but I think like that's basically what it is. It's a new battleground, and it's like, yeah, this is an instrument, and if you don't use it, you're probably going to get knocked down.
Yeah, and the whole idea of like ASIC resistance is also just flawed, because whether you want to say it's an ASIC or not, specialized hardware is always better than generic hardware, right? A specialized hammer that's just for roofing is going to be better than a generic hammer that is for all kinds of carpentry, right? It's a universal fact of the way that our universe exists. And when you design for a specific task, you can make trade-offs that will make that specific task more efficient. So if you do come up with some way to make it more memory intensive, you're still going to have specialized hardware. There's still going to be a certain amount of ASIC involved, and you're not going to be able to avoid that. You're just going to be able to make sure that only the bad guys get their hands on it.
Yeah, man, it's something where, I don't know, we're waking up to it, man. Like Monero's situation just happened not too long ago, and now we're getting stories of this, and it's all still playing out. I mean, like, I'm sure by the end of this year we'll be like, maybe we'll have like more solid information. Like, yeah, this is the only way to go if you're going to try and develop a crypto. You got to have an ASIC, with it.
So the big question is, when is Luke and Cobra going to publicly say, "Yep, JW was right. This was a bad idea to try to do a proof of work change"?
I don't
Luke
think you're going to hold your
probably
breath on that one.
a long time, if ever. Cobra, never. Have you seen his account? He's either completely brain damaged, or whoever bought the account is just decided to go full retard and stop pretending. Like,
Psyops. Yeah, it's gotten pretty bad with that account.
Like, it makes zero sense. Like, one day he'll be calling Craig Wright the biggest piece of shit in the fucking ecosystem, and then the next fucking, oh, look at these awesome guys, and it's like it's ridiculous. And like, he contradicts himself constantly. It's like, you can tell in his attitude that there is no genuine root in the shit that he's saying. Like, he went after how long? That's a scam. That's a scam. Literally kept digging into that for at least a week or two after there's undeniable evidence it's not. And then finally gives in. And then just immediately starts looking for something else to do. Like, he was recently complaining about Blockstream and Liquid as a federated sidechain, trying to paint it as some evil centralized thing for the banks. It's effectively a multi-sig address. So pretty much, if he has a brain in his head and realizes what he's saying that big financial institutions shouldn't use multi-sig addresses. That's just completely retarded. Like, that makes zero sense, or like, it shows that he doesn't understand what the hell he's talking about.
I think he was the only one to take a look at that whole Bcash party on a yacht and say, like, I like these guys as well. His character's changed, man. He's definitely something going on with that account, and definitely makes me worry. It's like, now it's like you can't even really confidently point people to Bitcoin.org. It's like, it's just getting to that level. But man, I guess that about runs it down, doesn't it?
Yep, pretty much. I guess we'll load Janine's preloaded thought first, because she had to run off.
Yeah, she had to take
that episode ended. But this is pretty funny. It's ETH scammer saying he doesn't realize, or he just realized there's not as many scams as he thought. Just a ton of projects that honestly think they can achieve overly ambitious goals. This is the perfect opportunity for anyone who's a beginner or someone who just wants to fill their wallets. Anyone can participate. 10,000 ETH giveaway. Just send some ETH and we'll give you free.
Wow. Yeah, you can see, like, that's where it's like, I'm like looking, okay, is there a differentiation in the usernames? Yeah, there is. It's like, yeah, that's a perfect example of how there are definitely scams everywhere, where you're just trying to say, like, look, not all these things are scams. Now you got a duplicate scammer out there scamming people. That's pretty crazy. It's we live in a bizarro crypto world right now where there's a lot of stuff going on. Oh shoot, did we just lose Nopara too?
There he goes. Okay.
Yeah, because I don't know, man. I didn't have much of a final thought, but yeah, that scammers in the space, man. Like, actually, Kevin Pham, he's like, he like started interacting with one of his scammers and started talking to him and stuff. Like the Twitter scam thing, like, it was funny. It was like it started to sort of like come down to where you weren't really seeing it, and like people were starting to thank Jack and Twitter for taking care of it, and now it's back like more fierce than ever. All right.
Who's got some thoughts?
Sorry, guys. I just got ransomware attacked. So I quickly paid off the scammers and come back.
All right. Like, yeah, I don't know. My final thought, I guess I was going to say, is like, this is the off by one joke 100 episode, but, it's, yeah, it's pretty awesome to be at 100 episodes, really. Like, I didn't, I don't know. We started doing this thing a while back now and been moving forward, and it's awesome just to hit like a You know, even if it's 99, whatever, you know, it's nice to get up there. It's pretty awesome. And I really appreciate everybody that's been, you know, sticking with us and following with us, and the nice comments, and, you know, even just the discussion. Forget, you know, not just nice comments. I appreciate all the comments, the discussions, the saying we're wrong and we're right. And just like the interactiveness between our chat and the discussion we have. I really appreciate all that. And it's been awesome going forward. I really appreciate you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be doing this if people weren't watching. So, you know, thanks for watching, guys. But JW is looking for his plug. So, boom, there's your plug.
There's my weekly ad. No, actually, what I wanted to say is about 2 years ago, when I was first working on this, I had a plumber working on my house, and he said that his daughter had like Asperger's and was on medication, and they were really struggling to try to get her to do math, and they were going to try some freaking psychoactive medication. It was really pretty hardcore. And she came over, and she was brilliant. Like, she just didn't she was actually too smart to do stuff that she didn't have any reason to do. And she, you know, I don't know, maybe she was a little socially awkward or something, but she'd probably make a great programmer. Anyway, what I'm looking for is anybody that has a kid that maybe struggles with math, preferably if they, you know, if their parents think that the kid is dumb. There's just no other way to say it. If the parents think the kid is dumb, if you can put them in front of MathBot and see how they do and let me know, that would be awesome. And then also for like super great appreciation would be if you could record it in some way. Because what I'd like to do is throw on the marketing site some kids just getting some self-confidence and seeing that they actually can do programming and they can do math, and that there's nothing wrong with them, and they don't need to be on Ritalin or speed or any other crazy thing just because they don't like to do really boring tasks. So anyway, hit me up on Twitter if you're interested, at Weatherman I am. Thanks.
Yeah, man, I wish that was around when I was a kid.
All right, and then this thing, give me 1 second, pipe in the audio, but no para brought this up before we got going on the air. Thought this was hilarious.
Oh, I haven't.
Well, sorry, audio fail. I think it's probably Firefox, but yeah, pretty much that's Jack Lau, I believe, from Lightning ASICs, and he's pretty much calling out Craig, and Craig's screaming at him, and right this second, he's pretty much demanding the room pick who leaves because one of us has to leave.
Wow, I gotta watch this, man. Yeah, that's I actually saw like something about it, but I'd been running the gun this morning with the early show. I hadn't had time to get. Oh yes, he's leaving. All right, that's awesome. All right, man. I don't know who organized that, but they got him out. They got the right guy out the door.
That was Jimmy Neugen who came up.
He's taking his technology.
Yeah, that's I got to watch that with some audio. As soon as the show ends, I'm going to check that out.
But I guess any final thoughts on other things from anybody? Because my last thought is kind of very pointless.
All right. Yeah, I've got one more final thought is I'm going to not be able to make it on the next episode. I got some family, coming in town. I'm going to be running through the mountains and stuff. So, I really, like I said before, really appreciate all you guys, and we'll be back. I'll be back at 101. Everybody will be here Saturday though, except me.
All right, anybody else? And
no, another good day another good week in Bitcoin, man. I don't care that the price is down. That's just because people are confused. Everything was like universally good news.
Well, I guess it's going to suck Saturday without Rick, but hopefully I'm still waiting on a final confirmation. We should have 2 guests and an interesting discussion. But I guess besides that, my final thought is I completely pointlessly rebranded my Twitter because I'm sick of dealing with idiots who have no arguments and so immediately go to "you're a troll" because troll's in my name. So everybody who does that, you can suck my balls. You can't do that anymore. I guess on that note,
very classy.
I like it.
Yeah, that makes my my reference to the pronunciation of the Zimbabwe dollar seem mild. So thanks for that.
But yeah, so I guess toodaloo, everybody. Hopefully, we'll have some guests and an interesting talk on Saturday. If not, you can listen to us bullshit as usual. See you guys next time.
Later, everybody.
Bye.
See you guys.